My topic for today is don't forget your humanity. And before I start this, I want to just do a disclaimer that what I'm going to share in this talk is not a reflection of my current employer. It is a reflection of me and the journey that I have taken as a recruiter and a sourcer since I started as an agency recruiter right around the Great Recession and going through all the twists and turns to where we are now with the Great Stay. I actually call it the Great Implosion. From there, we'll go ahead and get started. So first, why should we remember our humanity? There are 3 points that I want to share with you very quickly about why we should remember our humanity. First is we have economic conditions throughout the world. Our global economy has gotten to the point where livelihoods, dreams, our way of living have been put in jeopardy. There are no more guarantees. There are no more established pathways for success. And my heart really goes out to those Gen Z candidates and those Gen Z workers. And before I go a little bit further, I want to explain the picture that I have on the screen. And it will become a little bit more apparent, the theme, as we go through the slides really quickly. But this is Katniss and Rue, who actually teamed up together in the horrible climate of the Hunger Games, where there was only going to be one left standing. And even in the midst of that, she pulled on her humanity to team up with Rue and help Rue survive and make it through the Hunger Games as long as possible. So I want you to keep that picture, that visual in mind as we go through this. So as we go to point number two, the world has evolved into one where humanity is less regarded. We've got AI taking over work processes. AI has snuck into recruiting, has led to some recruiting teams being decimated, forever change. And this is one of the reasons why we need to remember our humanity. Secondly, or well, lastly, our chosen profession is based on humanity, human resources. Back in the day, we called it human capital. The reason why we're doing this is because some along the way in our journey, we had a great love for humanity, the impact that humanity can make on our teams, on bringing in innovation, giving new products. And this is the reason why we're in this industry. So, as we move through this, who should we focus on our quest to keep our humanity? I call it a quest because there's so many pressures that are coming against us that are keeping us from remembering that we're dealing with humanity. We're dealing with human beings, whether they're our teammates, they're currently with us, or they're candidates. So, we need to focus on our candidates and then also on our fellow recruiters and sourcers. So, these are the main focus groups that we need to look at in our quest to keep our main talent and our humanity. For first, let's look at the candidates. We've had too many casualties and to even number due to layoffs. Okay, these are some points we need to keep in mind. I was looking at a statistic over the weekend, and there's 107 million people in the United States that are currently unemployed. Um, I don't think that's the full picture. I think that if you're looking at people who have just given up, they're not reporting anymore. I think that number is probably significantly higher. But even if it's 107, that's a bad number that we need to look at. There's a lot of casualties. Even as we see here, we've got Katniss, who's us as a recruiter, the sourcer, and then we have Little Rue. She finally ended up passing away during the course of the contest. But these are our candidates. These Rue represents the dreams, the goals, things that have been put off, homes that are in jeopardy of being lost, livelihoods, a way of living, a way of thinking, a way of we see ourselves, or as candidates are seeing themselves, because they have been languishing for months and sometimes even years on the market. Our candidates are ghosted, they're outmanned, they're outgunned on every front. And we have to remember again, there's a family, there's a home, there's dreams, there's goals, there there are people who are possibly teetering in the brink or on the brink of a mental health crisis behind every resume and behind every application. We got to please keep that in mind as we go through this process of looking at our candidates and remember to be human. Now let's deal with how do we remember to be human with our candidates. First of all, for heaven's sakes, in the ghosting and open to work banner bias. I was opening up LinkedIn earlier today and I noticed that there was a candidate that essentially not necessarily pleading, but inside I felt myself pleading on behalf of this candidate. So, guys, if we're looking for candidates for a job, let's focus in on the people who have their open to work banner on. Let's not try to do this thing where we are like toddlers looking for the toy that another toddler has. In this case, we're the employer looking for that candidate who's already working for a competitor somewhere else. Instead, we're going for the person, we want to go for those instead of going for the person who's open to work. When you go for a person who's open to work, you get rid of a lot of noise. You get rid of um, those non-disclosure agreements, those restricted covenants. You don't have to deal with those. You don't have to deal with what if the candidate is going to parlay my offer to get more money with their current employer in the form of a counter offer. See, when you get rid of open to work banner bias, you don't have to worry about that. The ghost thing, that just kind of goes without saying. We need to really just get to a point where we get back to candidates. And one of the ways we do that is going through number two, number three. As the candidates apply, if they're not a match, just disposition them if they're not a match. Don't just have the candidate mentally thinking that they have a chance for this position when they've applied and they really aren't the match for the candidate. No, they're not the candidate for the role. They're not a match. A lot of times candidates are thinking, well, if I just apply to this job, I don't fit it, but somebody's going to see me. Somebody's going to see my application. They're going to talk to somebody about me. And we're running around, we're busy and that sort of thing like that. So we can't like kind of farm people out and that sort of thing, but don't have them sitting on the hook for weeks, for months. Let's just go ahead and disposition them as they apply. If you do have a finalist, you've got three finalists, one of them got the job. We're happy to call them to say, oh, you've got the job. This is great. But then what about the other two that didn't get that nod, didn't get the offer? I always like to disposition those candidates with a phone call. It's human, it's not cold, because if they've gotten through a situation where they've been through one or two interviews, they've got their mental picture, they've got their hopes. They're already seeing themselves updating their LinkedIn profile. They're already seeing themselves looking at the job in terms of like, this is my job, this is my job. I've gotten this far. And so let's disposition of the phone call, and then when you do that, try not to have them go empty handed. I always like to have um, candidates, I like to give them resources. I like to give them, hey, here are some LinkedIn groups that are part of our industry that you may want to network with. Just give them something. And I've had candidates reach out to me and say, Towanda, thank you so much. You've been a wealth of information. I really appreciate it. Even though they weren't the one that got the job, still give them something because your employer brand is at stake. Your brand, even as recruiters, at stake. We're in a situation now where candidates are at the point now, especially if they've been out of work for a while, they really don't feel like they have anything to lose. So they won't mind blasting you through their network and just telling you how terrible you were, how terrible your company was anyway. Because if they didn't get the job, they're not invested in trying to feel good, make the company feel good about them, or have a good outlook. So if they've been ghosted by you or by a company, then they have nothing to lose by dragging a recruiter or a sourcer through the mud. Treat candidates like the way you like your child to be treated. And it's something that I love what Paul mentioned before. It's almost like we're kind of like on the same wavelength. But think about how you would feel if your child was looking for a job, and think about how you would feel if your child was ghosted or was, given biased treatment because their open to work banner is up, and well, I'm just going to just throw them this nickel 98 job and just see if they'll take it. So think about that. Think about what your child could be going through if they're going through a job search. Also, remember there's a human behind every resume. Mentally put yourself in a candidate's position. How would you feel if you were the job seeker in this economy, not the good old days of the great resignation, but this economy where people are languishing for months, maybe even years, maybe since COVID, they haven't been able to land something. And then the other thing is we're busy, got less resources. People are taking more on more recs. And there's a tendency to be like, oh, it's me, I've got all these recs, I've got 100. Oh my gosh. Please try not to fall into that. Don't complain about the workload, but work with a spirit of thankfulness and gratefulness. And above all, a drive to rescue as many qualified candidates as possible for joblessness. Or if there's a candidate who's currently employed and they're saying, hey, my work environment has gotten really crazy. I can we network? Can we talk about like some other opportunities? Let's see about also rescuing that candidate from a toxic work environment if at all possible. Now, the other category of people to keep in mind are recruiters and sourcers. Now, if there's ever an underdog in any part of the world right now, any history of where we are right now, it's recruiters and sourcers. Um, from this picture here, this little shot, from the Hunger Games. So you're like an underdog, and that's kind of like how we could be it sometimes. Whether we're employed, we're the underdog because we're trying to deal with the mental anguish, the hurt of all these candidates that are coming through the ATS. You're like, gosh, I only have one job. I've got all these people. And that even feels kind of like an underdog type of situation because you're not going to be able to make everybody happy. You're not going to be able to hire everybody. But then if you're a recruiter that's going through this horrible market and you find yourself due to layoffs, that's an underdog situation as well. So pretty much the same points for recruiters and sources as for candidates. One thing I do want to put in mind are points number 5 and 6. Number one, we're the most attacked and impacted group since the Great Implosion. It's my pet name for the Great Stay because everything's imploding from my perspective because there are no guarantees. What was a great like golden goose egg of the tech job market, it's not there anymore. There's so many things that have changed that to me it's an implosion because of that. Unfortunately, just overall, we're usually are attacked by our own kind, by other recruiters, by other sourcers, whether it's in the workplace. Sometimes recruiters and sources are being attacked by each other in the workplace or even outside and they're looking for jobs. They're being attacked with bias, with to me it's an attack if you send somebody a horrible job that's not even enough money to sustain life just because they are open to work. That to me is still an attack. So how do we do this in terms of remembering to stay human? Again, same things apply. Don't need to repeat those over again, but for time. But I want to go to number 7 and number 8. Number 7, I'm sorry. Show empathy to recruiters and sources that are seeking employment. Again, how would you feel? How would you feel being a recruiter, being any kind of a TA type of professional that's looking for opportunities? And God help you if you're in DEI. That's another whole level that would take another presentation to even go through that. But show empathy to your fellow recruiters and sourcers. Humanity to recruiters. Also, if you're currently employed, we got to support each other. We've got to banish the Hunger Games mentality in the workplace. I'm hearing so many different things about people who are actually in situations where, because of a toxic workplace, they are having to go through and use their EAP 6 free sessions for a counselor to help them get through the day, to help them get the fortitude to actually get up in the morning and log in and go into work and show up because of the toxicity and the different things that they are experiencing in the workplace. It should not be named among us because we know what the stakes are. We know why we're in this. And if there are any environments where this type of stuff is going on, where people are kind of like teaming up against each other, those things have to stop because at any point we could be on the other side of the fence looking and trying to figure out where's our next job, where's our next opportunity. Let's band together, let's support each other. Just like today, this is like, to me, it's the beginning of the movement to supporting each other in this industry that we're calling recruiting and resourcing. It's for us, it's by us. And I just really, again, thank you for your support. I want to thank you for your time, for listening. And as we get ready to proceed into the next, I'm going to do my mic drop, virtual mic drop, and I'm going to introduce and hand it over to Carmen Hudson, the incomparable, the lovely, the just wonderful Carmen Hudson to take us into the next session.